Okay, so for this one, given theta is 170 degrees, we want to figure out what that is in radians. Well, we can use the fact that 1 degree is 180 over pi radians to help us figure this out. No, sorry, that's not right. I wrote the wrong one. We can use the fact that 1 degree is pi over 180 radians to help us figure this out. So this is one of our formulas. 1 degree is pi over 180. The way that, can you see that you're going to mix these up just like I just did? Because they're so similar. 1 degree is pi over 180. 1 radian is 180 over pi. So what are ways that we can help us remember? Personally, what I do is I think of pi being close to 3. What's 180 divided by 3? 60. And if you can think of that equilateral triangle that I had at the beginning of class, pushing that down a little bit, you might remember that 1 radian is just a little bit less than 60, so this makes sense. And then 1 degree has to be the other one. The other way that people remember this is they say, well, it's not hard for me to remember that 360 degrees is 2 pi radians, so 180 degrees is pi radians. And if I want to get down to 1, well, if I want to get down to 1 for degrees, I have to divide by 180. If I want to get down to 1 for radians, well, then I would have to divide by pi. And so you can use just the idea that there are 2 pi radians in a circle to do that. Okay, so if 1 degree is pi over 180, how are you going to figure out what 170 is? 170 degrees? Can you see that I can, how would I get 1 to 170? What would I have to multiply by? 170. So I take this side and multiply it by 170. And you do not need to reduce your fractions. I mean, you could change this down to 17 pi over 18. But you could leave it like that. That would be an exact measure. I multiplied by 170 here. So I just took this and multiplied it by 170 there. Because if 1 degree is pi over 180, 170 would be like 170 pi over 180s. And so we just multiply them together. If you type this into your calculator, we find out that this is approximately 2.96. 2.97 when we round it correctly. So that's how we would change from radians, so from degrees to radians. We would always multiply by pi over 180. If we wanted to change from radians to degrees, we could multiply by 180 over pi. Part B. Given negative 12 pi over 11 radians. So the negative means it's going in the clockwise direction. Can you visualize what quadrant that's in? Or is that hard to visualize because you're not used to radians? So when thinking in radians, we've still got 0 here, just like we would have in degrees. All the way around a circle would be 2 pi instead of 360. Halfway around the circle would be pi. Quarter of the way around the circle would be pi over 2. And 3/4 of the way around the circle will be 3 pi over 2. So those will be some values that you'll get to know with radians. Now, if we wanted to go, because in part B they say we want to sketch the angle of negative 12 pi over 11. So I'm going to do that in green. That means I'm starting standard position. It's going to start on the positive x-axis. The negative angle means that I'm going to be going over in this direction. And we're going to end over here. How did I know I needed to go that far? Well, can you see that negative 12 pi over 11 is more than 11 pi over 11? And 11 pi over 11 is the same as just pi? So I have to go at least pi and then 1/11 more. So if you imagine half of this circle, because half of it's pi, right? If you imagine that split up into 11 little sections, we have gone 11 of them and then 1/11 more to get 12 pi over 11. We want to figure out what is that angle in degrees. So when changing an angle from radians to degrees, it's going to equal, we'll start with negative 12 pi over 11, and this time we're going to multiply by 180 over pi. So when we changed from degrees to radians, we multiplied by pi over 180. When we change from radians to degrees, we multiply by 180 over pi. Now, can you see that the pi's are going to cancel out? And then if you take your calculator out and do negative 12 times 180 divided by 11, you find out that this is approximately negative 196 degrees. Now, as a shortcut for changing from radians to degrees, since you know that pi radians is equal to 180 degrees, when you've got an angle with pi in it, the shortcut is just to change the pi to 180 degrees, and that'll give the same thing. And the reason that happens is because the pi's will always cancel out and you'll be left with 180 degrees. Part C, given 7.5 radians, determine the measure to the nearest tenth of the degree. So we'll take our 7.5, we will multiply by 180 over pi. And we will get 7.5 times 180 divided by pi, 430 degrees rounded to the nearest degree. Oh, it said rounded to the nearest tenth of the degree, so it's 429.7 degrees. Another thing that I sometimes do to help me remember what I should multiply by, I have 7.5. I'm going to put the word radian there. And when I'm multiplying, I want to change from radians to degrees. So if I use the word radian as a unit, and when I write 180 degrees divided by pi, I write the 180 with my degree sign, the pi with radians. Can you see that your units cancel out? And you would be just left with degrees. So that's another way it can help you remember. If you're changing from radians, you need that pi on the bottom because that's radians. That same idea works for any kind of units. How many feet are there in, how many inches are there in a foot? 12. So if you wanted to find out how many inches was 3 feet, well, that's a pretty easy one. You might be able to do it right in your head. But as far as multiplying it goes, you could say, I know that there are 12 inches in 1 foot. Oh, this is going to be a problem. Are you okay with me canceling out the foot and the feet even though the letters don't quite match? Is that okay? But that would change it, and you just 3 times 12, you get 36 inches because your units would cancel out. That works for anything. How much money is $3 US? Well, 1 US dollar is how much Canadian right now? Does anybody know? I think it's like $1.35 or something. So now your US dollars, because this is Canadian dollars, they cancel out. 3 times $1.35, it's like $4. Okay, questions you can do for practice from number 1 are 4, 5, and 7. And I'll get you to try some of those now.